Old business, life safety items, capital improvements.
Okay, so this week, we finished all grading. The light pole, between last week and this week, all the grading's been completed. They were gonna do a final proof roll today, but they didn't with the rain that started this afternoon. And so they'll do that hopefully tomorrow if it's dry, or if not Friday, or Thursday or Friday. The east and west underground sewer stuff to attach to the storm trap has been implemented. All the light poles have been, in the bases, have been poured and set. The first part of the light poles and the bases that go, the concrete bases, they have been poured and set. And when Joel left this afternoon, they were already starting to lay out and begin to set fence posts for around the tennis courts. So even with all the rain, we still seem to be moving at a good pace. The roof, the architect, our construction manager, Scott and Joel, were on the roof for a couple hours yesterday, just walking around exploring that project. There's going to start some roof work as early as next week, just on the north side, like by the fields, and just doing some cleaning up the rocks and some of the things so that on June 5th, when they formally start the roof project, some of that demo can get out of the way. We have all the feeder elementaries are doing their graduations here. We were told that will have no impact. It will only be a few hours during the day to do some preliminary demolition and some setups and something like that. So on Monday, June 5th, they can hit the ground running. Scott, Joel is our director of facilities from Aramark, met with WT Engineering, who's the civil engineer that works with our architect, and the two architects yesterday, and you have started to go through all the remaining life safety items that need to be addressed. And so that's from some bleachers in the pool to the some flood mitigation stuff that's to work on some flood mitigation, and any other remaining life safety items like stair threads and some floor replacement, some fire caulking, things like that. So the way the board did this in the past is we had, I don't have the numbers in front of me, but I want to say it was roughly 9,000, or no, six, just under 7 million that were required to be addressed under life safety items. And so once those items are submitted to state and approved, if the board does not have the money on hand, we then have to go out for life safety bonds. There's another step to that process called a life safety amendment. So before anything can actually go out through bonds, you have to do these life safety amendments. And basically, it's a checks and balance for the state to make sure what was in your life safety report is what you're actually requesting to borrow. So it requires some additional write-up by the architect, and she creates these life safety amendments. When I say she, Carrie Matlock, our architect, submits the life safety amendments. The board formally approves them. Those approved amendments go to the state, where it takes 30 to 45 days for consideration. And the state will then, if they approve them, we can then have the authority to go out and bond for those life safety dollars. It's basically the state's way of doing checks and balances, because unlike working cash bonds or like a referendum bond, life safety bonds do not fall under the public petition requirements, because it's actually adhering to a need that the school district needs to address to be within life safety compliance. So the way we had set this up was we had two sets of bonds from prior to my arrival and prior from anybody on the board's arrival. Laura's was on the board at that time, when they went out and they redid roughly the 56 million in the construction bonds in the early 2000s. And so those bonds were callable at two different periods to be refinanced. The first large set of bonds to be refinanced came up in 2015, and the second set is due this December, in December of 17. And so what worked out very nicely for the board and for the district was we were able to refinance the bonds at the same time we were going out to borrow the life safety money at a very small impact to the taxpayer. And I believe it will be paid over 5 or 7 years, and that information is available on the website under the Board of Education tab. And so with all the financial improvements and controls that we had put in place and improved the budgeting, it helped improve our bond rating. And so the interest rate we received was very favorable to the district. And again, it was at a cost minimal to the taxpayer. So we have this other set of bonds that is callable in December of 17. Without gaining any negative arbitrage or any kind of like penalties for early withdrawals or early refinancing, we can do it within a 3-month window prior to December of 17. So roughly October, end of September. And so what Mr. Walsh was asking about that life safety amendment is, so I have the architect and the engineer, Scott, and the facilities manager working on all the items that need to be written into that life safety amendment. We'll then present that to the board somewhere in June or July, so you have time to ask questions to the architect engineer. You have time to see everything we're addressing. It will come out to be about roughly 1.5 million, maybe a little under, of what we need to go out for any final bonding to address the rest of our life safety items. And what we're planning on doing again is to get that approved sometime at the end of the summer from the state, and so that when we have that amendment done and those bonds become callable, we can hopefully refinance them with a lower interest rate, use the savings to help offset the impact of going out for this extra $1.5 million in life safety dollars. So there'd be little to no impact on the taxpayer, and we'd still be able to address all of our life safety needs. From the two finance guys, I cover that? I mean, is that?
Yeah, that's fair.
And the amendment will also include the amendments where the actual life safety costs and some of the items we already constructed were greater than what we
Correct.
proposed.
Like the
right?
granite panels.
Right.
So we got approved, we wrote, when we did the front entrance of the stairs and they were demolishing that new exit G off the old main entrance, some of the granite panels shook loose. And so we were able to submit a life safety amendment. The state was able to approve us. We had some money on hand. We used that money on hand from other life safety projects, knowing that we'll need to bond it out and make it. So there's very specific checks and balances so that we're not just asking for life safety money and using it to support an athletics or, something in the building. It's all earmarked and it's specifically accounted for between the architect, the engineer, the board, and the bond consultant.
And then the other last question is then will the bond consultant, when will they come in to give us the financial advice on the interest rate?
I'm thinking we use Liz Hennessy from
Right.
William Blair, and we would probably have her come to the board in August. And the reason I'm thinking August, Scott, is it makes sense because the board will be seeing budget for June and July, and August is somewhat of a down month where they unless there's significant changes to the budget, we're not hitting them from two different angles. This way she can come and talk about proposed interest rates on the life safety bonds, and then she would come back in September or October when we formally refinance them.
Got it.
And she updates Scott and myself on the interest rates if she sees anything spiking in the market or something that's going to change where it would almost be worth us doing a negative arbitrage to grab the lower, the current rate, where the penalty would offset the risk doing it sooner. But at this point, we're still okay, knock on wood. And if we can get that within the 3-month window and refinance at the same time, it's not free money, but I think we did 7 years at almost $6 million or $5 million, and it was something like $50 a year to a taxpayer. It was a very small amount. So, any questions? That's a lot. And I'll make sure I lay that out in a cheat sheet for you when it gets to August, but I tried to go step by step there.
Thank you.
Okay?